Welcome to the Just Be Nice Project podcast with me, Josh Reed-Jones, discussing all things powerful positive impact, finding out how you can remove barriers to opportunity for others through insightful and hopefully interesting conversations covering honest, diverse, and sometimes neglected areas of discussion. We are, as always, seeking to create extraordinary positive change in the world by helping you make ordinary positive change as we help you help others. You've got through the intro, now hang in there for the good stuff, strap yourself in, turn it up, and as always, just be nice as we roll the show. Welcome back to the Just Be Nice Project podcast. As we record this today, we respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're recording, the Bunwurrung and Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation, and pay our respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. You're here with me, Josh Reed-Jones, he, him, and today I am catching up with the CEO of State Schools Relief, Sue Karzis, she, her. Thanks for joining me today. How are you going?
I'm really well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. We're set up by a friend of ours, Chiquita. Shout out to Chiquita. Thanks for coming in. I thought it would be fresher this morning, but it's actually not as cold as I thought it was going to be.
Not too bad.
We'll kick it off in primary school, I think. Where did you go to primary school?
I went to primary school in Bentley West Primary School.
Bentley West?
But started off at Laylaw Primary School, actually. So my parents, immigrants. So we started off in Laylaw, and then they bought a dry cleaning shop in Bentley. So we moved across to Bentley. So, we had different experiences of growing up, I guess.
Awesome. How did you find primary school as a first generation?
Well, without giving away my age, in the 70s, being the sort of the daughter of immigrants was always kind of you do get to experience being the other. So being the one that had a really long name, which I changed to Sue. It's not actually my name.
Okay. Do you want to give us the full name?
The full name is Athanasia, which in the 70s, the teachers couldn't pronounce. The kids looked at you like you were weird.
Yep.
And as a child, all I wanted to do was just fit in and be like everyone else. So, which resonates with me. That feeling of belonging and fitting in is a really important theme in my life, and so resonates with what I do now.
So it doesn't seem that strange, I guess, because like we were speaking about earlier, North Dandenong was full of people from Lebanon and Greece. That's sort of where I went to school, and I don't think people were changing their names all that often by the time I was at school. Have you observed that sort of change over time where you can kind of, you can be Leonardo DiCaprio.
Definitely.
And it's okay,
I'm guessing, you're quite a bit younger than I am. So yes, there has been that change. So I guess when I was growing up, it was, I was called a wog many times. And so I experienced that firsthand. My parents experienced it all the time.
Yeah.
So yes, thankfully it has changed. And now you can be anyone from anywhere, and there's a lot more acceptance, which is a great thing.
Did your parents learn English when they came here, or did they already have some English?
No, they had no English. Came here in 1966.
Yeah.
Post-war, there was not much, opportunity back home. And they worked in factories here and built a life from nothing and, experienced all of that hardship initially to set up and learn the language and eventually settled like many others did at that time.
It's not an uncommon story. Which I think for some reason just people forget in a hurry when we have a new wave of immigration and people are like, nah, these ones are definitely cooked. They're no good. These guys they're going to destroy the fabric of society. And it's like this has happened probably 4 or 5 major times.
That's right.
Since we've even been a country. Are you bothered by that, seeing that in other communities or seeing other communities sort of tarred with that brush?
Absolutely. I think it's I've got a lot of empathy for that, because being made to feel like you don't belong is probably one of the hardest things, particularly when you're a child.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that feeling sort of ever goes away. It stays with you.
Yeah.
Being targeted for no apparent reason is always a hard thing.
Yeah. Did you have that situation at school, that kind of wog boy situation where you're the only one, you have your big blanket with all your food on it?
I absolutely did. Yeah. Well, so my parents, so mum always wanted to be a teacher, but she didn't have that opportunity in Greece. Came here and worked in factories and absolutely stressed the importance of education. So, and they worked so hard to send us to good schools. So I was sent to Kilvington Baptist Girls Grammar School.
Mm-hmm.
And in year 7, I was the only WOG girl, wasn't I?
Awesome. Great.
So that was great.
Were you Sue yet? Or?
I was Sue, but I was still a WOG, so, and that was obvious. So, I got bullied quite a lot. which terminated in a fight where I had 3 Year 9s, I was Year 7, who were going to bash me because I was a WOG. So
awesome.
That was great. It was a great experience.
Yeah, how'd you go?
I did really well, actually. One of the girls ended up with a bit of hair missing. So, I did all right. But my dad always said to me, if anybody calls you a WOG, you hit them. So I did that.
That's
probably
funny.
not the best solution, but that's what I did at the time. Yep.
Yeah, it's a different environment now, I think, in schools. But
it sure is.
It's an interesting situation because this happens. Again, it's not uncommon. You've got the first generation parents that come over, they work really hard. They then sort of want all these opportunities for their kids that maybe they couldn't have by virtue of changing countries in the middle of their lives and all that sort of thing. So you've had this sort of independent school experience, but now pretty much exclusively work in public sector. Do you see the gaps between the two? Do you see like an inequality of opportunity between those two kinds of schools, having been through one and also having been in one with your parents being like working in a dry cleaners versus other people who, might have a very different
yes.
home experience and go to an independent school?
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of, I think, so I've got 2 boys and I've sent them to state schools, and I'm a great believer in state schools, and I think they're afforded great opportunities and our state schools are doing a great job.
Amazing.
However, having been in an independent school, yes, I mean, I definitely sense that not belonging feeling because we lived on top of a shop, and it was a girls' school, so they often would ask you, what does your dad do? What does your mum do? And what car do they drive? And my sister, who is today a very successful lawyer, was also very good at lying at that age, and I was not good at lying. So my dad drove a black Valiant, but my sister said he drove a white Mercedes.
Nice.
And we had maids, so we had to live a lie.
Yeah. We have maids, they do all our that's why our laundry is so good all the time. We have the most pressed, our pleats are tighter than everybody else's.
That's right. So we did feel the sense that we didn't belong at, in our sort of, surroundings. So I think it's really important when I was thinking about schools, I mean, it was about affordability as well, but with my boys, that I wanted them to be amongst other young people that are just like them.
Mm-hmm. Black Valiant now is probably a pretty cool car.
Yeah, wish I had it now. It'd be worth a fortune.
We had a Valiant with like 4 different coloured doors.
That's what I was like.
It was like a pop, 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 pop down the road. It was was rubbish.
That's right. So you know what I'm talking
Big
about.
Big bench seats. It fits 17 people. No seat belts.
That's right.
Yeah, they were good.
They were the days.
So you obviously have one sibling.
Yes, I do. And 2 siblings.
2 siblings.
Yeah.
Competitive upbringing, or you all got along pretty good? Or
we all got along really well.
Yeah.
But I think, particularly for my sister and I, we just knew that we had to continue on with education. That was what we had to do. There wasn't really a choice about it,
Yeah.
So, no, we weren't competitive, but we just knew we had to do what our parents expected. So we had to follow a particular sort of path.
Yeah. Did you want to?
I didn't really have any sort of. I wasn't very ambitious,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's really important to tell people when you have. Even though it's a charity, I'm a CEO. I think people think, oh wow, and it's like I never had a plan.
Yeah.
Wasn't particularly ambitious. Probably became more so when I ended up being a single mother of 2 boys, and I had to provide for them. So
Yeah.
it's just the practicality of what you do when you have to do it.
What'd you do? What was your major in your BA at Melbourne?
English and history.
Oh, very good.
And then I was going to be a teacher. I did a dip ed, but I didn't want to teach. But I actually wanted to be in PR, but my mother didn't understand what that was. I had to do a teaching degree at Melbourne Uni because she understood that. So
PR sounds more up your sister's alley, just, bullshitting people about what's going on,
That's right.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not a black Valiant, that's a white Mercedes.
That's right.
100%. Come along and see it.
And she's done very well in that world. She's done very well. She's very successful, so, yeah.
Do you lament the fact that dip ed has, gone the way of the dodo and is no longer a thing? Do you think it was a positive...
No, I think it was a positive, yeah. So it was a positive opportunity. But when I graduated, there were no jobs because it was when Kennett was closing down all the state schools. I put my name on a list to go right through to regional, Victoria, Geelong and so on. I still couldn't get a job. So I thought, what am I going to do? I don't want to be unemployed. So I went and worked on a cosmetics counter of all things. And so I learned some really good skills. I learned how to sell, which is really important. And I learned how to blend.
Foundation.
That's right. All of those important things. And then I thought I better now do something, serious. And so I thought I'll go back into do some teaching, some emergency teaching. And I did about 2 weeks of that. And then I was offered a job at the Red Cross Blood Service, which was running their youth donor program. So persuading teenagers, because they've got to be 16 or over,
Mm-hmm.
to donate blood, which was a great job. So much fun.
Teenage blood better than old people blood?
No, but you've got to get them started early. So if you don't start donating at an early age, the data shows that you won't donate. And males are better than females in the sense that they don't leave to have children. So if you can get boys donating at 16, the likelihood is that they will continue to donate for life. So that was my sort of mission. It was great fun.
You were basically on the Red Cross Dolomites team just to get people indoctrinated early in the piece.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I travelled all around the state, and it was so much fun. And teenagers are just... I mean, I love young people. So some of their questions about, can you donate if you've had sex, and can you donate if you've, got a piercing?
No, mate, sorry, you're done.
You're done, sorry.
Tapped out.
What about if you've got piercings in weird places? I got asked all sorts of questions, and it was great fun. And they used to try to shock me, I was never shocked. So
yeah,
it was great fun. But you know what? Once you explain the need, and this is what I love about young people, once you explain the need, they were just all over it.
Yep.
They were getting in buses and coming down in bus loads, and the nurses weren't always particularly thrilled to have busloads of young people, but, it was fantastic. And it became a national program, actually.
Yeah, great. And when I was 16, I probably would have done a fair bit for like a cookie and a glass of orange juice or whatever.
Right.
I was always hungry.
That's right. Yep.
Do you find that now, having had that sort of, I guess, touring the schools of Victoria experience, are you reflecting on that now in your current role? These are lessons that I learned that I think maybe will be useful as we roll out programs into those same schools now.
Yeah, I think what I learned is that young people they're just really fun, and they're really willing to try and help, and they're kind, and people are always dissing our young people, but I think they're just they're fantastic, and they're fun, and they kind of keep you young. So I stayed in that job a really long time because I was having a lot of fun myself. But what I also learnt is that you've got to have a sense of purpose in whatever you do. And so one of my mandates was that I will only do jobs that there are young people at the end of. So this job fits in with that. So I would never do anything that is not connected with young people in some way. And I've reflected on this job. Just feels like it's what I'm meant to do, because I'm helping young people, and we can really make a difference. And I think as much as people think, you're giving uniforms, you're giving a lot more than that, as you would know from the clothes that you donate. It's actually giving people a sense of self-esteem and a value. And when you don't have a lot and someone gives you a brand new school uniform, it can really make a difference. Yeah,
there is. I don't think people understand that the size of the impact is definitely relative to where people are at, and I remember putting $2 and $3 of petrol in the car and things like that, and obviously if you can save $5, that's $5 towards a pair of shoes at the end of the year, or into the fuel tank or whatever. And people who aren't living that close to the line maybe don't understand
that's right
the significance of saving that $5.
That's right.
But for people who are in that experience, it definitely makes a big difference.
That's right.
Do you think that, I don't want to say older, more experienced people perhaps need to take a bit of responsibility for developing kids then?
Absolutely.
Instead of just moaning about it all the time?
Absolutely. I think, you've got to be working with young people to see what they're really, capable of. So I'm actually looking into doing some mentoring now. I'm at a stage where I feel like I can give back, and I really want to give back because, I think a lot of more experienced people should definitely be doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people make decisions or make, judgments, and they're so far removed from it, as you say, and we shouldn't be, unless you've been there, you really don't know what those young people are living or experiencing. And especially today, I think it's such a different time to be growing up, and I've got a 15-year-old and a 13 or about to be 14-year-old boy.
Good times.
Good times. 2 teenagers at home.
Here come the questions.
So you can sort of see, well, this whole social media thing, the way they're growing up, their virtual worlds of their game playing, it's a very different kind of upbringing, and it's actually hard to parent because we weren't like that. So it's a really challenging time. So I think having mentoring opportunities for young people is really important and crucial. And you know what they are? They're great. And they're really intelligent young people these days because they've got access to the information, as opposed to back when I was young. There was no Google. There was none of that. We used to type out our essays on a typewriter.
Yep.
And,
awesome.
All our information about anything came from Dolly magazine or something like that.
Okay.
So they're really well informed, and they're quite smart. So as a parent, though, you're not the source of all information. You're not this, you've got to actually have a connection with them and try to understand them and try to really relate on a different level so that they want to talk to you.
Yeah. It's a little bit different to the whole you will go to uni and you will become a teacher environment.
That's not going to work with my kids. They're quite strong-minded. It's definitely not going to work, no.
Developing young people into opportunities. You worked at Trinity College after after Red Cross, I couldn't for the life of me work out what they do at Trinity College.
I know, not many people can.
Is it like a finishing school for international students so that they will academically achieve, and they'll let them into Melbourne to do well enough? Or
okay, so what it is, first of all, Trinity College is a residential college of the University of Melbourne. So when the University of Melbourne was founded, there was land given to the various colleges, and they were different religious denominations. So all the colleges, like Queen's College is, Trinity is the Anglican college. So they all started off that way. So if you were a Catholic, you went to a particular college. If you were Anglican, so it has a residential history. And I think they have about over 300 students living on campus. So that's the main part of it. Then about 30 years ago, they started foundation studies, which is what you alluded to. So that's about students from Southeast Asia in particular can't apply directly to university. They've got to do a foundation year. So they come to Trinity College, do a foundation year, which is about learning how to write, writing for academic purposes, all that kind of stuff. And then they are guaranteed entry into the University of Melbourne as long as they pass that foundation year. And then the thing that my role was about running young leaders programs, which was sort of a taster, they were run in the school holidays, so they were like a taste of university life, if you like, for 14, 15-year-olds. So when I took them over, they were only for international students. I connected up with different organisations such as Yellery for Indigenous students and Western Chances, and we offered scholarships. All of a sudden this, instead of having all of these quite well-to-do international students, all of a sudden you had all sorts of students, and it was fantastic. It was a melting pot. So we had about 300 students on campus in July, and I was in charge of them all. I had to live on campus and make sure nothing went wrong. Can you imagine that?
Good times. Yeah. Good so you're well prepared for your kids now.
Yeah, totally. They know nothing can get past me.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
But I had a really good system. I had mentors, and the mentors were university students. So you'd pay them to live on campus for the whole, 2 weeks. And we had developed a system, like by the end of it, I was really savvy. So I had the boys in one, building, girls in another, and there was an oval in between, and we'd just watch, so nobody could
randomly turn the lights on every now and then and just catch people.
But they also did they actually used to go around and do door knocking, because occasionally you'd find a girl in the boys' wardrobe, or all sorts of things happen. So
kids,
seen it all. But gosh, it was great fun, really good fun. Those programs were amazing, and I can really recall. On a Sunday when the students arriving, there was an Indigenous student who was just like, I don't belong here, and just removed themselves completely from the whole thing. And the mentors were like, what do we do? And I said, just let them be. Don't try to force them to participate. Just let them be. And as this student was just watching these kids coming in. We had every colour and creed, and by the end of it, they were like, oh, okay. So I do belong here, because we've got, every
no
kind of...
No one belongs here, so we all
belong
here. Yeah.
So it was just this wonderful melting pot, and you learn just as much from them as they do from you. So
yeah, it's always a good experience. You got old mate from the Singaporean penthouse and someone from Arnhem Land, just like, oh, g'day, what's going on here?
Exactly. And we had like Indian prince, an Indian prince, and it was just amazing, as you do. But my idea about it was that if these kids connect right at that age, and they form these connections, potentially one day they could solve the problems of the world, because you've got all these, I just thought it was really powerful.
Yeah, 100%. People need a broader understanding of what's going on. I don't think we give people enough contextual understanding outside of a very narrow lane a lot of the time.
That's right.
I think that's reflected in all kinds of public policy and attitudes that you see in the media as well, that people are just like, oh, I think this and blah, and it's kind of like, it wouldn't take really much time with someone else to kind of work it out. They're like, oh, okay. You still just love your kids. You want the best for them. You want something to do, and
that's right.
You're not just a bludger or this or whatever. Maybe the prince was, I don't know. That'd be some kind of upbringing, but it sounds like you would have had to do a lot of travelling and for that as well. Yes,
I did. I travelled every year to Southeast Asia mainly. So Singapore, which I loved, and Malaysia, which was really fascinating, and Vietnam, and they were the main places I travelled to.
It's racking up the frequent flyers around Victoria and then internationally.
That's right.
After that, Monash, my alma mater, shout out Monash. I've got heaps of Monash stuff. I filmed a thing for them the other day, so I've just got all this kind of Monash paraphernalia everywhere at the moment. Yeah, they merched me up. Looking after the students there, they're a little bit older. Mm-hmm. So is that when you decided, no, it's too old after time with those guys?
No, I wanted to develop my skills in terms of breadth. So having, I just thought it would be an interesting thing, student services again. So that was the student connection. But I was at Monash College, which was the international arm. And so they were actually younger as well. So they were all ages, but they could be as young as 16 and living here on their own. And actually that was one of the most challenging things, because a lot of them were sent over here. They have to succeed, and they weren't succeeding, or some of them weren't succeeding, and there were suicide attempts. I was the one that got the phone calls in the middle of the night, which was really fun. But it actually showed you the mental health issues that they were experiencing. That was really challenging. And so what we did do, which was great, was we established the first in-house guardianship team. So any student under 18 was assigned a guardian, and nobody's ever done this before. It was actually outsourced before, where these people would just come in and be guardians, but they they weren't really connected. So we developed this amazing team of guardians, and so every student under 18 had a guardian who'd meet with them, get them set up with their phone, show them around, get them settled into their accommodation, and then touch base, and then we'd have a whole lot of social activities, so bonding them together and making sure they felt connected, because a lot of international students really do struggle.
Yeah, it must be a tough gig. I couldn't imagine going to study in China, for instance.
That's right.
It would be a very, very tough gig.
And understanding all your university assignments, and then succeeding, and if you don't, having to tell your father that it's going to cost another $50,000 because you haven't passed,
Yeah.
So that's what it was costing a year, $50,000 at least. Yeah.
Wow. I can imagine having seen those fights go down, not in my house, but elsewhere. But it's a challenging environment. Mental health in particular, people say, mental health, and it's just like everything. It's like saying sickness and covering the flu and cancer and a broken leg. It's kind of this cover-all term, but there's a lot of nuance.
Yes.
In that experience, when you go in, did you sort of start in kind of high level and then realise, actually, no, we probably need like a whole range of intervention opportunities here to actually help these kids, because there is no poster we can stick on the wall in the dorm that's going to solve all these problems.
That's right. And it was a multifaceted approach. So I used to look after I had a team of 3 psychologists that worked across the campuses. So it was, and we had kind of worked out a system where the guardians, if they saw someone struggling and they were under 18, you could kind of gently move, where it might be a shame thing for them to go and seek help, particularly depending on their cultural background. We could kind of coerce them into going and seeing the psychologist, make sure they're okay. It was that kind of wraparound service. We had psychologists, we had guardians, we had all sorts of services. We liaised with the accommodation providers and made sure that they, if anybody was in their room for too long, that they were going and checking on them, and they had, cooking classes, trying to really, bond them together, and it was really interesting. Was there
an appetite at Monash College to push into that space, or did you constantly have to bring back like an ROI?
No, actually, it was very well supported. Setting up a whole team of guardians was, never been done. It wasn't particularly inexpensive, but they were really supportive. I think because they realised that this is quite, it was a real issue for the student population, and we had to do something.
Yeah, just look at the old buddy program from when you're in primary school, and you
right.
come in and you get your old mate.
And they still do that,
Yeah, Michael was mine. Legend.
Oh, you still remember him?
Yeah, I still remember him.
Isn't that great?
I was a little nerd, so I didn't have that many friends when I was in primary school when I started. So
I don't think I did either.
Mum always tells a story like, I don't know, a couple of days in or something, and Dad's driven past, and he's coming, he's like, yeah, Josh was just sitting out the front talking to a tree or something, like.
As a parent, that breaks your heart, I tell you.
They're like, Josh, Dad and Josh talk to anybody. Talk to any tree. Just talk. Just constantly talk. Having been through that whole situation now, the young kids into this kind of international student and then through to university, what are your thoughts on the education system in Australia? You had the independent school experience from a very working class family, and then now working in state schools. Where do you see like gaps and opportunities just generally?
I think schools do their best to try to keep up, but I think, as we've discussed, it's a really, really quickly changing landscape, and I think that kids nowadays need more experiential learning, experiences, and they, my kids say, when we go to this class, it's just so boring. You're just reading from a book. They need something more than that. They need, teachers have got to be, teachers do a fantastic job. I'm not general, but I think kids need more of that interactive, kind of learning. I think at university a lot of them fall through the cracks as well, so making sure that first year is there's more intervention in the first year where a lot of students kind of just don't find their way is crucial as well at university.
Is that I guess because universities focus very heavily also on how much money they can squeeze out of everybody. They're always crying poor constantly, and whether it's true or not, and it probably is in some faculties and less the case in others. Do you think that puts pressure on the student experience as the universities kind of just have a dollars and cents focus more than a student experience focus?
Yeah, I think it does. And I think that, a lot of students are struggling. They're struggling to pay just to pay their way through and to have food. And I think that's really unfortunate in a country like ours. So I don't know what can be done, but I think that, at least, when we went to uni, they did introduce fees right at the end. But so I did have a bit of a HECS fee.
You copped it right,
right at the very end.
Bed stung you, yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's really hard. They're getting into uni, they're coming up with these huge debts, and I just think that's really tough. And then they can't afford to buy a house, and it's really hard. You
got rising house prices, stagnant wage growth, an overabundance of university graduates, expensive degrees, and along the way, it's very challenging. No penalty rates.
That's
if
right.
You're going to only sneak in work on the weekends and stuff like that.
Which is what I used to do. I worked at the IKEA cafe. I was getting paid a really good, amount, and that really helped.
And it's Springvale?
No, it was down back in the day. It was in Moorabbin. So that was my first job, after HSC as it was then. So
Serving the meatballs?
Serving the meatballs, making the coffees was great fun.
I didn't even realise that IKEA was sort of been around in Australia for that long.
Long time.
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess
I'm not that old, but
no. So you're like I'm young, I'm hip, I have a HECS debt, I'm hip.
That's right.
I paid HECS.
I remember that. Yeah.
I went looking the other day for it, and I was like, HECS isn't even the thing anymore. I mean, it's help or whatever.
Yeah, it's a help debt.
Calling
That's
it the
right.
wrong thing.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
When you start calling it like the 3 things ago, you're like, oh yeah, okay.
She's old.
Yeah, I did an HSC, and people are like, it's not even called that. That was 4 names ago.
That's right.
So, can we do a better job then of looking after the kids through sort of some funding rejigging in the system, do you think? Your kids are at state schools, so you can sort of say this without any hypocrisy or whatever, but is the way that we fund all the schools, does it leave people too far behind to justify legging up people that are too far in front already?
Yeah, look, I'm not an expert in this field, but yes, I think from my experience, just by looking at different schools, you go to some schools and they look, fantastic. Other schools don't quite have the resources. So if we could kind of, bring them up to a level playing field, that'd be a great start. And I think if you're a disadvantaged student in a disadvantaged area and you're going to a school that looks like it's disadvantaged, that's not helpful. If you've got a really, up-to-date school, it looks great. And look, there's a lot of work being done in schools, and I've seen it in a lot of the local schools as well. They're definitely improving, but there's a way to go. Yeah,
it is weird. I remember... So I've done work at some of the more affluent independent schools here as an adult, which is great. That they have an appetite to try and do some good, which is really good. But I remember the first time I walked into Melbourne Grammar, and I was just like, "What? This is a school? I would have loved this. It's like Hogwarts here. These buildings are beautiful. The grounds are immaculate." And I just think about our school where we had like people were putting dents in walls with people, and there were broken windows, and people would fall through stuff, and like, don't whack the walls, that's got asbestos in it. And
that's right.
It's like, well, no wonder no one cared there, and everyone cares here. This place is amazing. It
is. It's quite amazing, and the difference is staggering sometimes, isn't it?
There is a big difference between the worst and the best schools.
Absolutely.
Do you think then that it's pretty unfair for people to be like, well, just do better regardless?
Yeah, I think that's the most ridiculous thing to say to anyone. It's really hard to do well if you've got ice-addicted parents and you're stuck in you're not even being parented sometimes. These kids are left on their own in the most horrific circumstances, and they're the ones that we often deal with. Kids that are homeless, or families that are homeless, or DV victims. I mean, how do you tell them to do better?
Yeah.
What can they do?
Do we then have a gap in the discourse where I feel that perhaps you're able to present an image or a vision? This is also a story that I sort of sometimes tell when we're talking to boards of people that don't quite understand why it's important to carry help through. Like you say, you've got a child with ice-addicted parents, and they're unsupervised, and they would never read a book in their life, and they were the baby that didn't have their nappy changed for days on end, and now they're 8, and if we sort of snapshot them then, which is right when you've got them in primary school, we can kind of bleed a few hearts around that. They go, oh, wow, that's terrible. We should definitely do something. But that kid becomes a 17-year-old kid or an 18-year-old kid, and people are like, just get a job.
That's right.
Are we not filling that middle gap? That 8-year-old is that 18-year-old.
Absolutely.
You need to cut some slack, and in fact, if we wait till they're 18, the intervention is going to be much, much longer.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to really over-resource then.
Yeah, we had just yesterday, we had a principal from a regional school send us a letter from a boy who was in year 5 and has a history of suspensions and challenges at other schools. And this principal put in an application, and he'd sent a letter of thanks to her. So he obviously didn't know it was us, but sent a letter of thanks. But he'd also drawn all of the items and said, dear, whatever the principal's name is, I won't mention that. He'd drawn every single item, the long sleeve top and the jacket and the pants, and this is how much it had meant to him. And then he'd written a letter as well, and that just really touched me. I thought to other people, he's just this problem kid. But he received just a uniform item, and that was just, changed his world. How thankful, F-U-L-L, he and his mum were. It was just gorgeous.
Yeah. People don't recognise opportunities that they've always had.
No,
people
they
are very
don't.
poor at So someone who's always had shoes does not recognise shoes as an opportunity.
No.
They only recognise... If you didn't get a hug, maybe you have affluent family and great schooling, but you only got iPads every time you did something good, and you're like, I wish I got a hug. You'll notice that you didn't get a hug. But you didn't notice not having a shirt. I mean, I got a cupboard full of them, or whatever. And I think that speaks to that. The guy, you've got a kid here, is going, we didn't have this thing,
and you just feel like it's that really not fitting in and not belonging. And Ando writes about this in his new book. He talked about not having a uniform, and his mother, she'd lopped off the sleeves because they were too long on his jacket, and then she'd found some fabric that didn't quite match. So he had these two different fabrics, and he had to go up on stage. He'd won an award or something, and how ashamed he was, and that his mother had stitched together all this stuff. And so it's nobody really understands unless you've lived that. You don't understand that feeling of shame but other kids make you feel, I think I see it with my kids who are quite privileged because they've got the latest iPhone and they've got their AirPods or whatever they're called. They've got everything, and they wouldn't even sort of quite understand it because they haven't lived it.
And when you come through it, you're probably tougher for it, to be honest.
Yes,
absolutely. If you're one of those people that gets through.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was at primary school during the Kennett reshuffling, and we amalgamated with 2 other local schools that got shut down to become housing estates. And they changed the uniform, and then they changed it again really quickly. It was like, it was going to be white and blue, and they said, actually, no, we're going to be emerald green and blue. I had to wear the white and blue uniform for years because Mum's like, already bought the uniforms. Like, we can't go and get new ones.
That's right.
And so I was in the wrong colour for ages. And it's just like, we're getting it, or, whatever. And, of course, having a giant afro, being a huge nerd, talking to trees, all these other things doesn't help either. But
you're right, it does make you resilient.
But that's right, if you get through it. But it breaks other people. And I think
does.
that's like a huge challenge for, again, like the older people or the parents or whatever to try and help people get through it. But it is a massive challenge.
And I do reflect on that because I think that I'm the person that I am today because of what I've been through.
Yeah.
But my children, who are quite privileged, because I don't want them to have that experience.
You've got soft boys.
And I wonder, how do you know that you're building resilient kids? And nobody really knows. The research, nobody can pinpoint why one child who's been through a horrific childhood gets through it and the other doesn't. It's really hard to know why.
We try and encourage people to teach kids to take agency over what they're about through what they're doing. So we don't tell people to say, you should enjoy your uniform because Sue's kids don't have a uniform, because then you're just sort of teaching them comparison. And there's always someone with more. So if I should feel better because I have more than this person, then maybe I should feel worse when someone has more than me. That's not a good sort of lever to pull. But if you sort of say, what kind of person you want to be, and they're like, well, I want to be a nice person who loves their mum and looks after my family or whatever, and your mum gets you a uniform and it's not perfect. If you're a dick about it, are you being that person? And then they get agency over it independent of what anyone else sort of says. Because like you said, as technology becomes more prolific, you have less influence earlier.
Yes.
You used to be like the most important person in your kid's life until 10, 11, 12. Now it's like 6.
That's
and then they're like, they're coming in like, anyway, I'm on YouTube. I don't need you. I've got this. I've got 20 people teaching me stuff.
My kids just need me to feed them food.
That's right. Like, Mum, where's the food?
We're sorted. We've got our games.
You've got a fridge full. There's nothing in there. Make a salad. I'm just looking for a packet of biscuits. You know what I'm looking for.
That's right.
Teenage boys and biscuits. 18 months deep as the CEO, first female CEO since it was established in the peak of equality of 1930. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Why don't you give us the rundown on State Schools Relief, what you guys are up to?
Sure. So State Schools Relief has been around for a very long time, but probably I took this on as a challenge to see what we can do with it and how much we can sort of expand it, because as the need for assistance grows, we need to make sure that we're growing and able to meet it. So to date, we've not actually rejected any applications. We do receive state government funding, but over and above that, we need to make sure we're sustainable, because we don't know what that looks like in the future. So what we did, the first thing that I thought we should focus on is actually the social enterprise arm. So we've started retailing our uniform items and our shoes to help support our charitable work, and that's been really good fun and successful.
Yep.
So that's been a key focus for us. I think we've sold 700 pairs of shoes, haven't we? 700 pairs of our leather school shoes, which is great. We've done a couple of extra projects, so iPads for non-verbal kids. So I met a principal. I haven't really been to specialist schools or had a lot to do with them.
Yep.
I met a principal who told me that there are at least 40 students just in her school who couldn't communicate because their parents couldn't afford an iPad, and that was just another one of those moments. We need to do something. So we raised, with the assistance of Bank First and Gandel Philanthropy, we raised $80,000, which was wonderful. That allowed us to buy 190 iPads, which went in the space of a week.
Yep.
So that was the need, and we actually drove out. I wanted to actually see the impact firsthand. So we drove out with Lou to Bendigo, and where else did we go? Lots of places. Yeah, Maryborough, all sorts of regional schools, and we delivered them, and to see what that meant to those young people and kids was just amazing.
Yeah.
It was life-changing, because, as the teacher said, to actually give them a voice during school, but then they don't have a voice when they go home, that's brutal as well. So you can communicate to your teachers, but you can't communicate with your brother or your sister or your mum or your dad. And one of the parents wrote a letter to the local paper saying they'd heard their son's voice for the first time asking for orange juice through his iPad, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that you can do to make a difference, and it's relatively local. I mean, there are plenty of people who can afford to donate some money towards things like that. We're also looking to do Mikey cards. That's our next project. So raising some money so that we can pay it forward. We know that the majority of young people find for not having a valid Mikey are either homeless or out of home care, and they can't afford it. Mikeys are expensive even when you do work. So we want to fundraise for Mikey cards to make sure that we can provide Mikey cards to those that can't afford them, to make sure they can get to school.
I saw Luxembourg just made all their public transport free the other day.
Oh, wow.
For everybody.
Amazing.
Let's just do that.
That would be great.
Given that 79% of primary schools, 96% of secondary schools, and 91% of prep to 12 schools, so 83% of all Victorian state schools use your services, and you're funded to the tune of $3.9 million by the Victorian government.
Yep.
Do you see the opportunity to lobby the schools for just getting rid of bloody uniforms so that you can make it easier to get everybody clothing? Doesn't everyone prefer sports uniforms anyway?
Well, I don't know. I think in some ways, I know it's probably I'm sounding old now, but I think in some ways a uniform is a great leveller. So you can't tell the rich kid from the poor kid if they've all got the same uniform.
Yep.
I think I like that aspect of it. I think we can make them a bit more modern. So, the sports type jackets as opposed to the blazer that my children refuse to wear, and many kids don't want to be wearing a blazer.
Yep.
So making them comfortable, more like sports uniforms would be great.
Yep.
But you don't want it to be obvious that kids that have the Nike, the Nike
Correct,
shoes and that kind of thing. So I think uniforms are good in that respect.
Because button-up shirts that you've got to buy like a size 8 years too big for you in year 7, all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's not that practical.
Not
You're
that
just
practical.
going to kick the footy and ruin your boots.
That's right. That's right. So I think we could do some things, but I think there are, the support that we give allows kids to go to school every day and feel normal, and so that, that needs to continue in some way or another. Is there
any policy line, that you push that is about changing the normal then, as well at the same time? Do you poke that idea in and people's like, well, actually we could get literally twice as many things out to people if we didn't have blazers and we just had jumpers, or something like that? Yeah, look,
we don't have that kind of sort of pull, I guess. But I think a lot of schools, it's school councils that make decisions. And I think sometimes, again, if you haven't lived that, you don't understand what it means when you're changing that uniform and putting in a blazer that costs $300 or, you don't understand what that's doing. And it just makes things really difficult. So.
My high school had like 4 blazers that you just pull out when you go and present and stuff, or be the school captain for a bit or whatever. They just lived in the cupboard in the principal's office.
That's a great idea.
It's like, we can look like we have blazers. It's totally fine.
Without actually buying them.
We don't have to buy them. It's great. They don't fit anyone. It's like how you found a size that fits no one, but everyone can kind of get in, It's good. It's like everyone's wearing their dad's jacket too. So you had a little bit of an expansion as well a couple of years ago when you got that round of funding through the schools sort of pump up that the Andrews government put quite a bit of money into the space. Mm-hmm. How many staff did you have at SSR before that versus after that sort of opportunity for expansion?
So we had about 5 staff, and now we've got about 20 staff.
Wow, that's a lot.
And we use that money to to actually move to our Dandenong site. Yep. We've got a massive warehouse, and what we did is actually before that, what we do is supply vouchers to the retailer. Mm-hmm. Now what we do is we've got some generic, particularly for primary schools, generic items that we bring in ourselves, which means we can clothe 3 children for every, 3 times more with the same money. So having our own label has enabled us to really expand our support. So we've got, our own shoes. It's called Student's Choice. We've got our own uniforms, and that means we can help more kids. Yeah.
And were you managing that expansion? So that happened, and then you came in. I
came in after that, so I came in last March. Yeah.
You're kind of like, good, everyone settled. All right, cool. I'm ready to steer the ship.
That's right. I've been steering the ship in a different direction though, so making sure that we've got the infrastructure to be able to keep growing. So making sure that, I know it sounds really boring, but our IT systems are up to scratch, and but it's really important. As I've discovered, all that stuff's really important. You've got to make sure.
I wouldn't have picked you as the CEO that was going to come in and do boring stuff.
No, I haven't been doing boring stuff, I promise. I've been we've done all our sales. We're now uniform retailers. We've done the iPads. We're doing Mikeys. So I'm doing all the exciting stuff.
What are the prospects of having that funding extended past 2020, the government funding?
Our funding that we've just received, is for 12 months. I'm hoping that it's a given. The need is not going away. We know poverty affects, so many families in Victoria, so many children. So I think it should be continued, and I hope it is.
Should you just be a fully funded government service, basically?
That would be great.
Yeah, where they just go, righto, just administer this
that would
function
be wonderful.
That is necessary as part of the sort of state education system.
Yeah, because we know that it's being used, we know it's doing great things, so absolutely it should be.
Is that like something is that possible?
I think it's possible. Yeah, I think it is possible. Yeah.
Do you have bipartisan support? Do you work both sides of the
We do work both sides, yeah.
No one wants to say, bugger the kids.
They can
not learn. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
It hasn't become an issue that's divided the house just yet.
Not yet. And we are also about to roll out next year our Glasses for Kids project as well, which is an amazing program. So we go to 250, well, next year, because it's 12-month funding, it'll be 50 of the lowest low SES schools, and we test and screen and provide glasses for all grade preps to year 3 students. Mm-hmm. And they go out, off with their glasses. And there's so many kids who have been just left undiagnosed because their parents can't afford the glasses. Is
this like the dental van for eyeballs
sort
of thing?
Yes, it is. Well, maybe we should call it that. Dental van.
The dental van for eyeballs.
That's good.
Cool.
It's really
now
catchy.
I get that straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's amazing. But we had children who couldn't see 20 centimetres in front of them, and the teachers thought that they had behavioural problems.
And dodgeball's going to be really challenging for those kids.
Yes.
Quick reflexes.
So to think that we live in a country that kids are going without glasses is pretty amazing. Like, it's mind-blowing.
It's insane.
Yeah, it's insane.
And let's be honest, Luxottica can put it up the glasses based on what everyone else is paying, can't they? So the glasses only cost a couple of bucks to make.
That's right.
It's all right. They can be heroes and still just provide everyone with glasses.
That's right. So that's another exciting thing we're doing.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Eye tests are free already, aren't they? You can go and get your eyes tested, but there's no point if you can't afford.
That's right. And what they've found is, in disadvantaged families, they just don't do it. They don't follow up. They don't, So if you can, it's kind of the wraparound thing, bringing the services to the school. Kids just have to go and do, the test, and it's all done for them. And then there are their glasses. It's all, because often when families are struggling, it's just another thing, and it's, it's too hard. They're already struggling with the cost of living and paying their rent and getting food on the table. So it's just another thing they don't need to worry about.
Plus, kids are hopeless, so they lose stuff all the time.
And they break them.
They break them.
Yes.
My brother, good work. Is you remember when you lost your glasses, mate? That was awesome. Mum lost her mind. That was like the worst thing. I don't know where they are. Well, I thought they were in my bag. It's just like, great,
yes,
well done.
I've got a son like that.
Are we measuring the right things then to determine who gets help? How do those referrals come through to you guys?
Yes, so we work with the schools, and we don't have parameters such as that you need a healthcare card, because often, that's not relevant. If you've fled your house because of domestic violence and you've got no clothes for your kids, well, so it's a case-by-case basis. The teachers or wellbeing person or the principals often know the families in need, so we work with them. We also make sure it's really sort of anonymous, which is why a lot of people don't know about State Schools Relief. We don't have big marketing budgets or advertising budgets. We work directly with the schools. The items are, go straight to the school. They're given to the young person or child, and nobody knows.
Yeah.
They come to school the next day, kitted out and happy.
Are the kids then in those situations, you sort of keep track whether they're like the same kids year on year that you're helping as they grow, or is it kind of a bit more spot help? Do you know? We
do both. So there's no limit. If a young person or a child needs something 6 months down the track as they've grown, that's absolutely fine. That's what we're here for. We don't put a limit on it.
Is there a recycling of old uniforms function that you do at all?
We don't do that. No, we don't really have the capacity, and we don't sort of know what happens. I think often schools
will just
do that.
And just keep it in the sick room,
that's right,
or whatever.
Yeah.
What? How do we get people to understand these experiences better? You're seeing them all the time. It's incredibly frustrating when you're in this space and you see it. I'm sure people are like, isn't it terribly rewarding? And you're probably going, basically all I see is more that needs to be done all the time. There are some lovely moments, but really it's just all you get is a better understanding of like more needs to happen. How do you think we can do a better job of helping people understand these sort of lived experiences of these families and these kids and communities?
That's a really good question. How do we do that? I think we've just got to talk about it more. We've got to make it more normal that, these people, they're just people amongst us every day. They're kids that are your kids' friends. They are, your neighbours. They are, and I think we've got to stop judging. People often say, they're working. Well, we know that there's the working poor, so we've got to stop making judgments about what poverty is and what it isn't and what it looks like. It has all sorts of facets. It looks, different to everyone, and it's a real thing. So we all need to understand and try and do our bit to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Do you kind of have those conversations in maybe more resource-rich schools about that, like this is what's happening over here? Do you do any of that sort of stuff as well, or is it only purely as like a fundraising sort of
and look, we try to get the message out in different ways to schools. Sometimes schools are resistant to, we don't use State Schools Relief and we don't have that need here, and you feel like saying, well, actually, you do, because you've had 80 kids who've received support. So let's be open about it, let's see what we can do as a collective instead of, pretending it doesn't exist in our little community, and and our little patch does.
Do you ever run into that sort of attitude of what's the point of helping these people, or they should do better, or they should help themselves, or why do they get everything and we don't get anything? Is that an objection that you come up against?
And it just makes me really angry and frustrated. It's like, seriously, are we having this conversation? Just look at, maybe we, just go and look at the statistics and then come back and talk to me. There's lots of stats around on how many people are living in poverty in our own country.
I mean, if you can point to me the 5-year-old whose fault it is that they can't get a uniform, then maybe we can have the discussion.
That's right, exactly right.
What are people engaging state school relief need to know? Like, what do people who want to get involved, what do they need to know about what's going on and what you're doing? And
Okay, so if they want to access our support, they need to go and speak to their someone at their school, wellbeing coordinator or a principal, and they can put an application in on their behalf. So if there are any parents out there, grandparents, a lot of grandparents who are looking after children who need the support, please go to your school. If you are having difficulties, you come back to us at ssr.net.au, contact us, and we will contact the school on your behalf and make sure that you do receive the support you need. If you want to donate, go to our website, ssr.net.au, and donate money, which will help us to roll out those programs, particularly the Mikey program, the iPad program, which we'd like to repeat. And if you'd like to volunteer, you can contact us as well and come and work with us and see what it's all about.
Send an email and utilise that amazing IT stuff that you've been working on.
That's right.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to help someone like you were as you were coming up?
I would just say to go and talk to them and see what they need and tell them about the services that they can access, and just try to sort of include them in things and make them feel a part of the community and make sure that, we're all extending that sort of, that we are kinder to one another, actually. That's a really nice way of putting it. And I often say that to everyone. We've got to be kind. We've got to be kind to the people that come to seek our support. We can't judge. We've got to stop judging and just be kind and help. And I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, you can make better judgments if you put a bit of time in anyway. You
right.
might still end up at the same conclusion. It happens sometimes.
That's
but,
right.
At least you've actually put some time into working that out.
That's right.
When did you feel like you got some leg ups that just came out of nowhere? Do you have any experiences where you're like, oh, I didn't earn this at all. It just kind of happened, like, luckily this person was in my life or something?
I've never really had, so I guess growing up the way I did, we didn't have those connections, so everything I did, I had to work for really hard, and I often did the jobs that nobody wanted, and that's how I got to where I got to.
Yeah.
So like, what? You live on campus for 2 weeks looking after 300 kids? Are you crazy? And I was like, no, that's just what I've had to do. I've always done what I had to do to be able to support my children. So I never had this sort of. I love it when people say, "Oh, I've just got to choose what I want to do," and I'm like, gee, that's interesting. I never really had that choice. I just did the next thing that came along. But what I did. There's one person who actually saw the potential in me, and that's a manager that I had, and we're still, friends to this day. She actually saw the potential in me, and it's really important when someone, because I didn't see it myself. So when someone says to you, you know what, you're a great leader, you're really good, and I was like, what, really? Oh, okay. So actually so that's why I'm a great believer in mentoring and someone just seeing your potential and before she left a job, it was actually at Trinity, before she left, she made sure that I had a seat at the table. So I was put on the executive. So all of a sudden, I was put into this position where I was, on the executive team. I was like, oh, okay, that's great. So she did help me, but I think women need to do more of that as we become CEOs, and there's this, sort of, I call it the leadership myth where, all of a sudden when someone becomes a CEO, they've all got these wonderful credentials. Well, you only do those when you get to that point, and you can afford to do the professional development, you can afford to do whatever, the courses. But let's not pretend that, we're all these wonderful people. We're just normal people that are lucky or, came across a good opportunity, worked hard and got there. But I never had a plan. My son said I should be a CEO. That's where I got the idea from. So
yeah, great. He's onto it.
He was
onto
it.
I Googled this thing, Mum. You should definitely be this. Because you told me I couldn't afford the new iPad. I looked some stuff up and apparently I need you to be a CEO. So I can
when I was an associate director, I said, well, obviously, Mum, that's your next step. And I was like, oh,
is it?
Okay.
Great.
And then it happened. So, never a plan, never. I think, it's all about just finding where you belong and what you think you can add to, and I think I can value add. As the first female CEO, I'm really nothing like the other CEOs who are all male and they're all principal and they looked a particular way,
Yeah.
I'm breaking that mould. And
yeah, you are.
Yes, I am.
First one to wear pearl necklace into the boardroom. Right. It's like, yeah, I'm doing it.
That's right. But there's plenty of other women and men or young men from all sorts of diverse backgrounds who can do the same. But somebody's got to believe in them.
Yeah. I think we over-index the individual person all the time. Like, oh, I can take it for granted that you work hard and you know your stuff, but we then never talk about those other things that come into your life, or, the service that dropped off the uniforms kept me going, like the people that sort of said, oh, I know a person, you should meet this person, or the someone who flicked you into an opportunity. People are like, oh, well, it's either it's all about you and what you did and how good you are, But really, it's like it is this kind of there's this whole other 50% that is just all these people believing in you and getting amongst it as well.
And my mother, who looked after my kids so I could work. I mean,
good on you.
Many people don't have that.
Yeah. That's what everyone needs a good old-fashioned
who fed the boys and kept them, fed and clothed and while I was working. So lots of people don't have that support either.
Are they still dry cleaning?
No, retired now. But Mum still looks after the boys, and so I've had a lot of help along the way. It's not,
Yeah.
But I think, like I said, we've got to stop. Women, there is this aspiration gap where women just aren't aspiring to the top positions because there's this kind of myth about, you've got to be this and you've got to have been to that school. That's absolute rubbish.
Yeah.
And we've got to make sure we start telling that being truthful about what it is. It's just luck, or it's just, opportunities that come your way. But you've got to seize the opportunities.
Yeah. You've
got to have the confidence to seize them.
You've got to sit your son in front of all these women and say, you can be a CEO and you can be a CEO.
That's right. That's right. He tells me, you've got to be more, more confident in yourself, Mum, which is really funny.
He's doing his hair in the mirror like, you just got to look great like I do. Yeah, great.
That's exactly
what he does. Where my sonny's inside,
That's right.
That's how I roll.
That's right.
That's fantastic. I have no doubt that they're wonderful kids. It would be hard to not be when, they get a great mum like you.
Oh, thank you.
I have a lot of respect for single mums, having seen all that sort of situation many times over and been through it myself. It's a tough gig. You sacrifice a lot in every direction to get it done. So they're very lucky.
Thank you.
Our last few questions are they start off with one that I'm going to change. It was abs or kebabs, but I'm going to say abs or souvlaki because you're Greek.
Definitely souvlaki.
Yeah, I could have met.
Any day of the week.
Yeah, we'll go down to Oakley and we'll punch them out down there one day.
Absolutely.
How do you know if you're doing a good job?
It's because it's a hard job too. Sometimes you've got to make the hard decisions. It's not always, it's not always rainbows and butterflies. So you're doing a good job when you get a letter like that. And I still tear up when I get those letters. And, knowing you're making a difference is the most important thing. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning, because I know that somewhere along the line we're making a difference to some young person.
Yeah, and probably their parents as well, not just the young people, even just creating that little bit of space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which also means maybe like that guy didn't punch that kid at school, which then improves
That's
somebody's
right.
day, down the line. So you can pass a law right now. What do you pass?
Oh, so many come to mind, but a lot of them are inappropriate probably. Pass a law, what would the law be? Free childcare, yes, and free university.
Yeah, free university.
That would probably be the one, because I think that would be great.
Yeah.
A lot of kids don't go to university now because they think, well, we can't afford it. And particularly if you're in a regional area, you think, well, I've got to also afford to live, rent. It's too hard.
It is very hard. I also don't feel like universities necessarily have this, they don't have a drive to just be awesome educational places as much now.
They've become more vocational. It's about you need to learn this to do that. It should be this more expansive.
You can do it online. It's fine. Save us the lecturer. All this kind of stuff. Right. It feels like they're not trying to just punch out the best people.
That's right. The best thinkers. I say free university. That's my rule.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And what is your favourite way to just be nice?
Favourite way to just be nice is just to compliment people randomly. So on a daily basis, try. If I see someone that looks good,
lean
remember
out the
to tell
window
them.
of your car. Nice handbag.
Yes.
It's a ripper.
Great shoes.
I'm just gonna be wandering in Bentley, just walking around, just waiting for someone to shout something friendly at me.
That's right. Just being nice to people, thanking them for what they do, the little things.
Love that. Any last things you want to shout out to everyone? Where can everybody find you? You're on LinkedIn and things like that.
I'm on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Happy to talk to anyone that wants to be mentored. I believe in paying it forward, so I'm lucky to be where I am here, today. I'm lucky for the opportunities. I'm always happy to pay it forward.
Can I borrow your yaya for a little bit?
I'll get her to whip you up some lucky.
There we go. Thank you so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. It's
awesome
been fun.
work. I look forward to keeping up to date with it all and hopefully jumping in and helping out at SSR as well. It's awesome.
Thanks so much. It's
Thank
great.
you. Cheers. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. If you did enjoy it, we would really appreciate it if you could share it with others that you think might also enjoy it. Check out the show notes to find out more. Like, subscribe, maybe even give us a rating if it's a good one. Remember that we care. You matter. Have an amazing day. And as always, just be nice.